Okay, here we go. This is Robert Phoenix on the Friday Farcast. Although it's not Friday, it's actually Wednesday for myself and my guest today, Mr. Ole Damegard. And welcome, Ole. It's been wanting to have you on my show for a while, and I guess this is the time. The cosmic forces have aligned to bring us together. So welcome to the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's a real joy and honor.
Yeah. So one of the things that you, where I really got keyed into you was when you were decoding a lot of these psychological operations and these false flags, and that how they would leave clues as to where the next sort of operation or quote unquote false flag would be. And a lot of that had to do with travel and you actually traveling to these places. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And that's been shut down now for the most part. So that part of your kind of investigative journey has, for a period of time, been ended. Is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is indeed.
Yeah. So are you still able to kind of uncover and uncoil things, even though you don't have to go to these places?
God, yeah, for sure. It's like, I've been doing this for almost 40 years now, and I've been to, when we talk about travel, I've been to more than 50 countries. I've toured in 15, and so it's it's just like learning how to cook or becoming an expert on cancer or whatever. After a certain number of years, you get better and better at stuff, and so I've had many years of learning practices and also trying to understand what is actually going on, because that is what started my whole journey. Because of confusion, I was so confused what is actually going on here, and nobody seemed to be interested in what was actually happening. Everybody was buying into the official stories or whatever, if it was the JFK or other assassinations or whatever. So I just found myself trying to figure out what the hell is going on here, because there's something weird. There's something that doesn't match up at all. And that started me down this very, very long road. I had no idea that this would end up in the way my life has become now. But it's over the years, I've started to learn the language of how these dark forces communicate with each other, how they set up the operations, how the black ops are working, how the psychological warfare is done as well as part of these operations and so on. So it's just like learning a language with the grammar and the coloring and the humor of the language. It's the same here. So the better you get at understanding that, and this is what I've been trying to share for many years, the setup of how are we being deceived? How are they able to lure us into these ambushes, and many of us not even seeing what's going on? So this is what I've been trying to do for a long, long time. And over the years, I've become so good at it. And also I have an incredible network all over the world now. So that up to this point, I've been able to, on international radio, predict 59 of these alleged terror attacks up to 2 months before they actually happened. So, and this is not because I'm super intelligent or got a crystal ball. It's just when you start understanding how they work, and also that they do this bizarre thing of leaving clues in the forensic evidence. I can come back to you later why they do that. But once I started understanding that, that was actually the starting point of me being able to also stop these operations, by exposing them before they even went down.
So pattern recognition is critical when understanding how these events are staged and where they're going to take them next. And I think that that's a really useful skill that people can integrate into their own life. Pattern recognition, with their own habituations or reactions and things like that. How old were you when you had this so-called break with reality and thought there's something else going on here?
I was in my early 20s. It was, I know the exact night. It was 1980, and it was the first time I saw the so-called Zapruder film, where you see very clearly that JFK was hit from the front and his head was thrown back to the right. So it's just a matter of a normal physics. You know, you don't have to be super clever. I always go for what I call Farmer Brown logic. 1 + 1 = 2. Doesn't matter if you got a fancy white robe and a nice title. If you say it's 34, it doesn't make it more true. It's still a lie. And that will help me track down why they put someone like this person trying to promote this lie. And so what should be a mystery that could be solved in like 5 minutes, saying, well, the shooter very clearly was not behind him and up to the right in a six and a high building up there. The shooter, at least the last shot, must have been fired from the front and to the right. And I mean, any forensic detective can figure it out like this. But here we were, all of these heavyweight journalists and heavyweight documentary makers and commissions and investigators, and everybody was pointing to the official story, the patsy, the patsy, the patsy. And I just felt, this is so bizarre. And that it was also at that time I was working as a journalist, and I was sort of like, that really confused me, because these people were not doing what they were supposed to do. On the contrary. So that confusion led me down this road that has then taken me into mainly the areas of top political assassinations. I've been digging extremely deep into JFK, Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, Malcolm X, Olof Palme, Lady Diana, Bob Marley, John Lennon, many of these high level. Bob Marley was also an assassination. So that, and then into the area, it has taken me into the area of so-called false flag operations, because these are the areas that I've focused on. Because when you are in the area of conspiracies, it's very easy to be all over the place, you know, and when somebody's going to listen to you, they just feel that this is a very confused individual, and it's a waste of time listening. So I focused and tried to become as laser sharp as I could in this area to be able to be part of making a difference for the better.
So were you a journalist in Sweden at this time when you were investigating this stuff?
I was born in Denmark, but when I was 8 years old, we moved to Sweden. And
moved to Sweden, yeah. So that is interesting, because I mean, when I think of Sweden, you know, I think of, you know, pacifism. I think of Bergman, existential crisis, all that stuff. I don't think of being, you know, kind of awake and aware with that culture. How did you fit in, and what was that like for you to actually go through that transformation in that culture?
I didn't fit in at all.
Yeah.
I never felt really that I fitted in anywhere. And I mean, this was not my native country. But I became like, I didn't fit into Denmark. I didn't fit into Sweden. I was sort of like in the middle, in between. I think many people who have grown up in multiple cultures, they have the same rootlessness of not really fitting in. And so when I started looking into these things, I was odd before that. So people were, yeah, right. No one was really interested. And this was, I felt on an international level, this was way before the internet. And at that time, you know, to find out stuff, you had to travel. I tried to go to England to find literature there about the JFK assassination. I went to the States trying to track down people there and so on. So it was hands-on in a much more dominant way than now, when everything is within the reach of a keyboard. And also, I don't know, I spent years in archives and interviewing people and so on. So I was actually one of the speakers in Dallas a few years ago at the JFK conference, which was an extremely great honor for me to be part of that gathering there.
Yeah. Do you feel at home on this planet?
I do.
You
I
do.
Yeah. I do, and I feel at home in most places. I live like in a little soap bowl, and I move it around with me. And so it's the same with my family. We live almost off grid, and everything is online. We can very easily move around. And so this is what I do. But now we've been locked in. It's day 101 today. Since
101.
101.
Yeah.
So But now they started to loosening the grip. I think Spain has been held really hard. You know, the government here, it's Agenda 2030 big time, and they will not let go if they can keep us
Yeah,
strangled.
it's sort of like the new fascism all over again in Spain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's bad news.
At least the food is good.
I wouldn't say so, but
You wouldn't say so.
no. You know, Spain has been a very poor country for many, many, many generations, and so it's the general, what do you call it, the culinary scene is very basic farmer,
Right.
yeah, poor farmer. You know, it's like tomatoes, bread, wine, cheese,
Yeah.
paella.
Yeah.
And paella is most of the time leftovers that you just, whatever it was, the leftover, you chuck it in and boom, there you go.
Right. Right. Yeah. I've only been to Spain once, went to Sevilla, and I don't know if that's where that ranks in the rest of Spain, but I could attest that I had pretty good food there. So
Fantastic.
is there any, so Europe now is saying that they don't want Americans now to come in once they loosen the grip on the COVID restrictions. Are you following this? EU saying, we may not allow Americans in here. Have you seen this?
Nope. But that's been a thing for quite a few years, that Americans have not been able to move here and have been given limited permission to stay. So that the visa has been like 3 months, I think, 90 days or something like that. And because there's a lot of Americans that have been, we've got American friends that have been wanting to move here, but it's been very, very difficult for them if they were not loaded so that they could buy a property or so. But
Yeah.
this has not been the case.
Well, they're being very upfront now about a very clear demarcation that when we open, there's a good chance Americans will not be allowed to travel. And it's not just about the Corona thing, but it's a message, right? It's a bigger message that this idea of American exceptionalism and the West, they're drawing a curtain on the West. And I think people need to pay attention to this, because you just mentioned Agenda 2030, and that's really the goal. Do you have anything you want to share about that, or any insight into that?
Agenda 2030 or Agenda 21 is if you don't understand what's going on in the world, I would very highly recommend. There's even like 5 minute versions, dummies, Agenda 21 for dummies, that just explains the whole thing. And I think it's 194 countries or something like that has signed this agenda officially. I've not been able to find the people who have signed it, but they say that these nations have signed it. And it's the New World Order nightmare on steroids. It is absolutely mind-blowingly dark. And most people are not even aware of it. But this is what is being rolled out now. At least part of they're trying to roll it out. But that is one scary plan for humanity, because they want to depopulate like 2/3 of us. It's bye-bye. They want to control everything. I mean, everything, including private property, will not be allowed anymore. It will be control over water, deserts, forests, sea, whatever it is. They will be the state that controls it. The state will take care of raising your children. You will not be allowed to move how you want to. You will be forced into so-called smart cities, where normal people will be stacked on top of each other in like slave accommodations, and then will railroads just go into the factories, and massive big spaces, like for instance in the US, will be without population at all. They will just clear the countryside and control everything, food, water, you name it. And in the smart cities, they will, with the help of 5G and AI, they will control everything digitally. So it's a really, 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 really dark agenda that we must do everything we can to transcend.
And this comes out of the Rio Summit, which happened in 1992, Rio de Janeiro, and of course George Bush theoretically was one of the signatories of that treaty. And people wonder why all this is happening now at such a breakneck pace. Well, pay attention to the year. It's 2020, and next year is 2021. So they want to move this thing as quickly as possible so they can get on track and start the massive escalation from Agenda 21 to Agenda 2030, which is the end of the 2020s. So we're in that portal right now. What are your thoughts on this? What's going to be happening in Davos? Basically, Davos came out and said we're in the reset. What are your thoughts on that?
I wouldn't know for sure. I mean, if you're talking about the World Economic Forum
That's
meeting
right,
in
the
Davos,
WF. Yes, yeah.
I would say they are the ones behind this. It's another word for the New World Order. It's for the 1% at least. Davos is a very small little place in Switzerland, only 11,000 inhabitants, I think. But last year when the conference was there was 1,500 private jets. So, and the entrance ticket is, I think the cheapest one was $100,000. So you see the level of finance power to this whole thing. And when you go into and you see their agenda, their presentations, it looks beautiful. I mean, it's so beautifully made. The graphics are amazing. Once you start seeing what it's all about, oh my God, it is a wet dream of the New World Order. They want to destroy everything, nations, traditions, people, borders, genders, families, whatever it is, they want to destroy it. And out of this, they want to create what they call the fourth industrial revolution, where they will, out of the ruins, everything else needs to be destroyed. And out of these ruins, they build the new world where it's all controlled by AI and this whole thing. So once again, very, very, very dark future, which I must say, maybe I sound really depressing, but I'm a super optimist. I tell you that. I think the future is going to be absolutely amazing if we handle this in the right way, because this needs to be dealt with big time.
Yeah. Well, I'm in agreement with you. I've gone through a transformation where I've been, fairly cynical about a lot of things, but recently I've made a big shift and have been noticing a whole other emergent reality that's underneath what we're actually experiencing. And I'm sure you've kind of gone down this path, but I feel like there are these moments in time in our history, whatever our recorded history is. And for me, I just go right back to JFK because I think that's a really important event in time, and that there was a time there where theoretically there was going to be a real opening in consciousness. And I've talked about this as being like this idea of Camelot and Arthur, and that whole kind of mythical sort of tableau that's around Kennedy. And it really felt like we were headed in that direction. And then boom, the bottom drops out. Johnson comes in and rescripts reality, right? That was a big deal. And I'm an astrologer, so I look at cycles, and that's when Saturn was in Aquarius. And then the next time Saturn is in Aquarius is when George Bush has the first Gulf War, the New World Order, and then signs the Rio Summit, right? So here we go. There's another potential opening. And what do? They commandeer the timeline. And here we are again, Saturn in Aquarius. And what are they doing? They're up to their old tricks again. But this is a different time now, I feel, because people have been waking up. And this is a really important part of the process. And you have been studying yoga. You're a yoga teacher. You have, I'm sure you have a very deep and profound spiritual practice in your own life, along with just being a Raja yoga teacher. Can you talk to this and maybe address this kind of emergent reality and how it can be very helpful for people to really kind of lock into that?
I mean, we're forced into this situation. This is not something we've chosen that I'm aware of. So it's like in Raj Yoga, they talk about the 3 A's: accept, adjust, accommodate. So it's like there's no point of complaining. There's no point of trying to avoid. It's a matter, except it is what it is. And I would suggest that we are at a full spectrum war at this time.
Yes, absolutely.
It's on all different levels. It doesn't look like it. It's like an invisible full spectrum war where we're being attacked from all different angles, including air, food, finances, our freedom of speech, our everything is under attack at this point. So how to deal with it? And this is where, like, I've been, for many, many years, I've been very confused about what is behind it. I don't understand the mentality behind it, but I've come to a point where it's like, I'm maybe this is easy for other people to understand, but for me it has not been. But I'm starting to see that evil is something real. Maybe there is even such an entity like Satan or the devil, I don't know, but that evil is actually a force, and that what we are part of is like we're down on the street level, but there's this massive battle going on between the good and the bad, between love and evil. And so if you only look at what's going on a street level, I think you miss the bigger picture. You miss the understanding, a possible understanding of what's going on. And the same if you look at just independent nations like the US, or you study only France, or you study only Canada or Australia. Once again, you miss the whole point. You have to get to sort of like a helicopter view where you can look down from a bigger picture. And that's when you start seeing what's actually going on, where nations are just like pieces on a game board or chess board, and we're used like franchises and being, it's this whole illusion of democracy, of this and that, and all these things, so many things we've been told just turns out not to be true. So I'm almost on a daily basis unlearning stuff that I thought, because I thought that I knew history. I thought that I knew this. Sorry, I've had to be boom, boom, like that as well. Did they trick me there as well? And there and there. So it's like an unspelling. Like it's almost like we've been under this spell, and where we've been put like in a coma. Like I don't know how they've done it, but it's almost like a magician saying, and now go to sleep, boom. And millions of us just went, and in the meantime, when we've been asleep, they have been, rolling out all of these different plans. And now we are in a position where we more and more of us are like, holy crap, what is happening here? So we're sort of like waking up and yawning and not understanding, because it looks totally different. Or it looks the same, but there's a total different reality behind it than we thought were there. And so in one way, this is, I think, a fantastic time in history to be alive. It is so intense. It is so possibly horrible, scary, wonderful, fantastic, evolving. So I call it boot camp. And many people have seen too many movies in Hollywood, and they think that life was supposed to be pink and fluffy and you should be happy forever after. Otherwise, something would be wrong. But I think that we misunderstand the whole point of being alive in that case, because we're here to learn all aspects, and we're here to evolve as spiritual beings and human beings. And the thing is, now the table is set. This is it. We've got the whole shebang at the same time. So amazing.
Yeah, absolutely, utterly amazing. You know, my, I talk to people, I have clients, people come through my portal, whatever, and they will send me text messages, and sometimes they'll be very emotional, or, they'll say that, the world is crazy or this or that. And they're looking for some kind of path back to the way the world was. Right. And I'm like, you better get over that world. That world is over. Like, you better just get wise, because that time is over and done with. And if you really want to be able to keep your sanity and move forward, you've got to basically cremate that version of reality. And when you do that, that gets into that kind of yogic principle that you're talking about, right? It brings it right into the center. This is what we have.
It is, like if you're an acrobat or something, when you practice, you have all these security, safety equipment on you, and you can do all kinds of stuff. And then suddenly they take them off you and say, now do it. This is where we are now. We've been taking away all of these cushions of what we saw as safety has been taken away. We're not even allowed to plan ahead. We can't do anything because it's like here and now, here and now. It's like life is trying to remind us it's only here and now that counts. The only moment you can affect is here and now. So everything else has been taken away. So we have the future. Is it going to be pitch black right down the drain, or is it going to be absolutely amazing? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. So we are in a situation where you just have to learn to deal with it. So how can you deal with it? It's like accept, adjust, accommodate. You have to practice yourself. It's a battle. It's a spiritual battle. So you have to see, how do I fight this whole thing, and what do I want to accomplish? Because if you fight, I would very strongly suggest, if you fight violently or viciously or with revenge in your heart, the result, you might win, but the result will not be good. You will create bad karma, and you will create a future that is loaded, charged with the actions of what you did. Like the US, I mean, you have a history drenched in blood in so many different areas. So the thing that you're not allowed into Europe, well, maybe it's part of karma. You know, it's like you have to be aware, become aware of the law of karma. The people carrying these horrible operations out against us, they're super aware of the law of karma. I tell you that. And that's why they fear, and that's also why they put the clues out there. That's because of the law of karma. So it's and I also want to point out that people think that the law of karma is what you do comes back to you. I would like to point out that what you don't do also comes back to you. So this is when you decide not to do anything or look the other way, that will hit just as bad. So this is a time to stand in your truth and find your own balance, and then walk your truth and excel.
One of my early spiritual teachers kind of redefined karma for me, and he called it the law of balanced interchange. And when he explained it to me on that level, it made a lot of sense. And it took that kind of like, people have a kind of a textbook definition of karma or a Hollywood definition of karma. But when he explained that to me, that made a lot of sense. Like, it's sort of reciprocity. What you give is what you get. And, it's a very clear and easy kind of principle to follow once you understand it. And, it's ironic because, again, theoretically, the United States went to Europe in World War I and World War II and helped liberate, Europe, which we know, if you follow that historical tale, it's virtually a lie, right? It's virtually like, the United States were working on the side of the Soviets to ultimately annex all these countries to the Soviet Union, who would march through the West, to on their way to Berlin. And there's a lot more that went on during that time. But if you go back and look at the so-called, official narrative, oh, we went there, we were there, and Omaha Beach and D-Day and all that stuff. So you would theoretically think that we would have good karma, right, with Europe. But if you know the real story, maybe that's not the case, right? At all.
Well, you got like Prescott Bush, the dad of George Bush Sr., was the guy that funneled a lot of the funds into the Nazi war machine.
Yep.
You had Alan Dulles, the CIA director, or he became the director of the CIA. He and his brother John Foster, the foreign minister, both of them were backing the Hitler war machine. You had ITT, who was equipping Hitler with all the telephone services, all of the best technology and so on. You had the Rockefellers who owned half of IG Farben.
Yep.
That was allegedly made the poison for the concentration camp.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely not true. There's so many things around the Holocaust that is so not true. And I've only made one into you about that, because starting to criticize that is like swallowing a shotgun and ending your career, like boom. So I've done one. It's called Making Critical Thinking Illegal. You can find on YouTube. It's one of the few that is not shut down. But in that, I goes through the whole Holocaust and the logistics of it, and how the numbers and the whole thing does not match up whatsoever. So the whole thing with history is you have to understand that history books are always written by the people that won the battles. You never hear the German version of the Second World War. You very rarely read about that, or you very rarely see movies where the Germans are heroes. But when you actually look at it, you had a lot of people, brave people on all different sides that did incredible things, and of bravery, and also of horror. So, you know, it's unlearning and finding out what actually happened. That is one of the key questions I want to share, is like, whatever happens in nowadays, I mean, most of the time, horrible things get shared to us via these black screens in front of us. These, whatever it is, you look out the window, beautiful world. You look at the screen, the world is absolute chaos and horror.
Right.
So the question is that I always ask: is it true? What I'm being told now, is it true? Just because it says so on the screen, I can write and click enter. If I'm control of your screen, I can write whatever I want. And if I'm control of the outlet on mainstream media, which, like, there's 6 companies controlling 96% of the US media, radio station, TV station, publishing houses, magazine, there are lots. Then are you surprised if the information being given to you is controlled? So it's like, is it true? And then number 2, who benefits from me believing this? Who benefits from me getting scared? And that's where you will see the real reason for many of these things.
Wow, there's a lot there that I want to follow up on. I'm going to go back to World War II for a second, because as the West was building up Germany, they were also doing the same thing with Russia at the same time. And Anthony Sutton has really gone into great detail around all of this. And of course, the Russian Revolution was financed by the quote unquote bankers in New York City. Bernard Baruch and Lev Bronstein was the money man, the bag man, which took a lot of that money to former Soviet Union to stage this revolution. So they were working both sides, right? There was a big experiment that they were creating. They created tension on both sides of this really tragic event, and people don't quite understand that, right? They you know, we've been told that there's a winner and a loser and a good guy and a bad guy. And in many cases, that's just not really true. And what we're dealing with is a manufactured reality that people are moved around in and are slotted into roles that they ultimately wind up playing, whether they like it or not, or understand it or not. I wanted to ask you, though, growing up in Europe, what was that like for you with the education around World War II? How did they program you essentially about the war?
I think exactly like in the US, and we got very little education in school about this. I mean, a few hours, the Second World War, that was it. Very, very little. So I've been studying my whole life on my own, because school didn't give me anything. But it's like, I feel the more I become aware of what actually happened, it's like watching American wrestling, you know, where the whole thing is set up. You got the people there bleeding in the ring, dying sometimes, but at the same time, everything is set up. It's staged, and it looks like a conflict. But I'm funding both sides in the background, and for the people, in the background, it doesn't matter who wins, who doesn't. You know, their game is death, destruction, and debt. Debt is the thing. Because they are not interested in money, they're interested in debt. They got money enough. It's through debt that they can control us. So debt has been one major thing in many wars, where they made many countries, you know, become under attack. And so they had to borrow money to buy guns. And then the loans that have been given to them are loans that they can never really repay, but will forever be in debt and in slavery to the people that did it. Through the IMF and the World Bank, they're horrible institutions, horrible institutions. I mean, they're like financial assassins, but when it comes to nations. So it's all very pretty on the surface and really ugly under the surface in the background.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. What was I going to say?
I do
Could
not
you
know.
talk? Could you talk about the difference between? I mean, debt's a really interesting word, and a lot of times people will equate it with money or a loan, but there is a deeper meaning to debt, and I'm sure you've explored this on some level. Can you offer any insight into that word and what it means, like even on like a spiritual level?
Um, I don't know the exact meaning of the English word debt, but I know the Scandinavian languages have the name for debt is guilt. It's the same
Guilt.
name, guilt. It's the exact same name as guilt. And also you have like mortgage. It's a French word, mortage. It means death cage. And so when you get a mortgage and you say, oh, it's only 13%, whoa, yee, it's a death cage that you've just got yourself locked into, where they're kind enough to let you pay for 3 houses instead of 1. And like it will take you 30, 40, 50 years of your life to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And all created out of thin air, these the debts that are created out of thin air, where because that is I think around money, that is the biggest hoax ever. It is unbelievable when you look into the fraud around what money really is, how it's created, how debt is created out of thin air, and how financial slavery is created out of absolute thin air. But we so believe it, almost once again, like we're being put under a spell, and so we won't be able to see what actually is going on.
Yeah, I think the spell is a really important concept, and people I think need to really be aware of the fact that there is an attempt on a daily basis to keep you in the spell, to keep you in the trance, and it's everywhere. It's there are symbols, there are frequencies, there are people who are in the spell who want to stay in the spell and don't want you to get out of the spell because they don't want to be alone in the spell. I mean, there's all these things that are going on simultaneously, and it's pervasive. It's really, really pervasive, and part of the waking up process here.
I think also so many words have been weaponized against us. I think if you look at the whole legal system, the wording of the legal system is made as a weapon against us. The language is so hard to understand by design, so that we will feel totally helpless and just kneel and bow and accept that we have no power whatsoever. And it's in many other levels as well. With authorities, you have the same thing with the wordings, but also through media and how they're using it as sort of the keep us in this fear spell, where they weaponize words like, conspiracy theorist or conspiracy theory. That's a CIA creation, both of these, to get rid of critics like myself, and make jokes of them. That was a word created after the JFK assassination. But if you listen to the word spelling, you spell a word. Can you spell this word? I don't think that is by coincidence that It is, because you can charge words with these spells. And so on the news, if you look at the news, on the daily news, it's there to keep you scared. That's the whole point, keep you afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have all kinds of methods to do that. I spoke to a hypnotist who went through great detail on how the media is doing it very, very cleverly, on how you have like, and now the news, and it's 5, 4, 3, 2, the counting down. You got sometimes a circular globe or something that spins.
They've got something going on in the background, which is definitely putting you into a different, what data
It,
state or something like that, right? I mean,
it's to get you down in the alpha state.
alpha
And
state. That's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then once you're there, am I here?
Let's
Felt like,
see. Yeah, you kind of went away there. Hold on a second. Huh. Let's see. Uh, manage participants. There we go. You're back now.
wait a second. Boom.
Yeah.
Let me
Yeah.
just see. Okay.
There we are. Yeah.
So once you're in that, are we okay?
Yeah, we're good, man. We're good.
Okay, great. Okay, so once you're in that alpha state, the veggie state type of thing, that's when they start maneuvering. And the way to get you even further down is that at the bottom of the news, you have all of these lines, like from the NASDAQ 4.3.
The crawl. They called it the crawl.
Yeah, that makes absolute no sense to anyone.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks, oh, it's for geeks, but I think for them as well. Anyway, but it's not by coincidence. This is to get your eye movements going like this.
Mm-hmm.
And this is exactly how you also get into that. So with the help of those, and then you have colors like blue. If it's serious, they have used blue. And if it's emotional, they go red. And so once you're down there, that's when they start hitting you with words like terror attack or terrorist or mass shooting or, Allah Akbar or ISIS, these, it's that there should be a variation of words, but they never vary. It's the same words that they keep repeating, boom, 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 boom. And it's there. You think you come home after a long day work, and you lie down on the sofa to just chill a little bit, but that's when you're in for the bazooka.
Right.
At your face, like, boom.
Right.
That's when they hit you.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. And then they always end with the so-called feel-good human interest story. Like that's always the final story on the news, so that you can actually leave that experience feeling okay. It
wasn't that bad.
Yeah. Hey, they found that missing puppy, But in the meantime, they're just pulling your brain apart. Yeah. And pouring in whatever they want to pour in. I met a guy a long time ago. Do you know who Gary Webb is? He wrote that. Okay. I went and saw Gary Webb a long time ago when he was alive in Berkeley, and he gave a talk there, very, very enlightening talk. And there was a guy in the audience. You meet interesting people at these events. Yeah. And there was a guy in the audience, and he basically told my friend, and I said, look, he said, there is a CIA operative at every single major newspaper, every single major TV station and radio station across the United States. They're either a station manager or an editor, and their job is to control the flow of information. So when we look at the news, we're not just looking at the news, we're looking at people that are inserted inside of those groups and organizations to control the flow of the information that these people want you to witness and think is actually happening, and it's reality.
It's called Operation Mockingbird, and it's not only the States. It's they have their tentacles all over the place. So I experienced the exact same thing in Sweden, in Germany, and so on. So it's the same all over. They worked very hard for many, many years to concentrate the power to fewer and fewer and fewer. So now the tentacles are in all the major areas of life. But that's the good news, because it's one octopus. It's not like 1,000 different ones. The tentacles go to the same head. And this is where we also see that many times we bump into the exact same individuals over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to kind of bring this kind of up to the present, and want to talk about some of the COVID-19 stuff. I also want to get into the George Floyd event in Minneapolis, which I'm sure you've probably spent some time looking at. But one of the things that I wanted to kind of open with and make a transition with is that we've talked a little bit about the Holocaust, and I've been looking at what's going on now, and to me, it feels like what's being done or what's being created is a new version of the Holocaust. And that the Holocaust, as we might understand it or interpret it as a historical event, whatever that is or was, that has actually lost some steam, right? I mean, there are people who theoretically were there at that time, and they're, will not be here. They're going to be old and gone. So any kind of living descendant of that narrative will have gone away. So what would be important would be to create a new Holocaust on some level, right? And so I think what we're witnessing now is a reanimation of a new Holocaust. And if you look at it, a lot of the same kinds of phrases or techniques or ideologies are present. So instead of anti-Semitism, it's racism. Now we have a whole, anti-Semitism has moved to the background now. Now it's all about racism. And now instead of having reparations go to the survivors of the Holocaust, we have a new group that wants it, is demanding reparations. So it's it's kind of like they're flipping a script again, and they're giving us an event that is based on a collective trauma, but they're changing it, they're modernizing it, and they're making it more pertinent to a new generation. What are your thoughts on that?
Could very well be so. I think that what the world is experiencing now with the COVID-19 thing is a very mild version of what was actually being planned. And if it's okay with you, I could go back a few months in time, and because I believe that I was part of the stopping like 50% of what was being planned.
Yep.
No, I fell over this evidence that led me down to this whole thing. So on the 21st of October 2019, I was on tour in Sweden, and and at that time there was one of the people that I was exposing big time was a man called Ole Damegard, who's the security coordinating officer of something called Samverkan in Stockholm, which is this organization, and his task is to coordinate the efforts of ambulance, fire brigade, police, military, the government, the defense department, and the intelligence agencies. That's his job in an emergency case, earthquake, terror attack, whatever, that is his job. So anyway, what I found was it's like a TED talk. The alleged terror attack in Stockholm was a truck attack. I need to go back to that, in 2017, where it said that an immigrant hijacked a beer truck, then drove down a pedestrian street, killing 5 people, injuring a lot of other people, and then crashing right into a mall. And so on the outskirts, that looked like a really bad, horrible event. But over so many years that I've been looking into these things, I don't know.
It happened again. Hold on a second. Let's see, what do we got here? Let me manage you. Can I manage you? I don't know why this is happening, by the way. Oh, maybe I do. I don't want to be too paranoid about it.
It is what it is.
Yeah. Why don't you keep going, and you work on your side, and I'll try to do this on my side. Okay.
Yeah, it seems like my video is blocked.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we're going back to the event.
Yeah.
With the truck in Stockholm. Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, a few months after this alleged truck attack, this man, Ole Damegard, had a presentation which he called From Drill to Reality. And he described what actually happened that day. And in it, he was describing how 1 minute before the attack actually happened, he raised the terror threat level to maximum, as well as sending out bulk emails to all of the different organizations that were then involved in
I'm just throwing this up there for you while you're talking.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay. Now you're back. You keep talking. Go ahead. Go. There you are.
Okay.
Yep.
So anyway, he raised the terror threat level 1 minute before it actually happened. So how can you do that if you're not involved? I mean, that is impossible. And what he did also was, in this presentation, he described exactly what they did during the first half hour, where they shut down the subway traffic, the bus traffic, all the traffic in the whole city. They put the parts of the government in quarantine or lockdown, the defense ministry, all kinds of things. And this happened even before anyone even knew who drove the truck. So it's a smoking gun if I've ever seen it. Anyway, so I started tracking this guy, and I exposed him big time in different presentations, and I found out that he was involved in a lot more stuff on an international level, where he was funded by the Rockefeller Foundation. He was working together with different organizations in Europe, and one of the things that that I found was that he had been in many of the places where alleged terror attacks had occurred, where he was there at the location. And so I found him more and more suspicious. Also that he was a key player. I'm not saying that he is the sort of the kingpin.
The
Absolutely not.
Right. Yeah.
No, but he's totally involved in these operations. That's what I'm saying. If you want to see a real terrorist, he is one of them, not Allah Akbar and Muslim terrorists, but this is a real one. Anyway, so I started tracking down his Twitter account, and in this Twitter account, I came across incredible information where I saw that he was involved with other key people behind these operations, these alleged terrorists. But we are talking now NATO-sponsored terror through the Gladio network in Europe, carried out with the backing of CIA in the background and Mossad also. These two are always in the background. Anyway, so what he was in one of these tweets, he said, he's been in, he was in Barcelona. He said, we just celebrated our 500th meeting. That's a lot of meetings if you're only employed in Stockholm, where it's pretty calm. And anyway, he said, we've now decided on 39 locations with a duration of 36 hours. It would be a coordinated attack on Manchester, London, Paris, Barcelona, Rotterdam, and two power plants in Sweden. So when I saw that, I was just like, what on earth is this?
So he said that on Twitter?
No, but it was a very small little group. This was, I tell you, was not meant for us to find out about. Anyway, so I started tracking down, and the more I looked into it, it was spot on. And what they were planning was 39 coordinated alleged terror attacks in Europe, in NATO countries, all of them, 5 different NATO countries. And the duration of the time was October the 23rd to the 24th, with a duration of 36 hours. And it was, this was Manchester and London in England. Both of them have had alleged terror attacks that I and other researchers have exposed big time as inside jobs. And this was exactly at the time when the so-called Brexit referendum was going on, where England was trying to leave the European Union, and the European Union is also a creation of the New World Order. Yeah. So they don't want members to leave, because if one leaves, that might inspire others to do the same. Anyway, so had a mass attack like that happen in England and the rest of Europe, that would have given them a very perfect excuse to just say, very sorry, but you're not allowed to demonstrate, you're not allowed to vote, you're not allowed to do anything at this point. We're going to lock the whole country down while we sort this mess out. The Paris, that's exactly where they have the Yellow Vest movement, where it's much, much bigger than you're being told in mainstream media. The same thing there. If this would also make France be able to shut down all of these demonstrations and so on for our security. Right. Then you have Barcelona, Spain. Catalonia is trying to free itself from Spain, the exact same thing there. And then there were 2 power plant, one nuclear power plant disaster planned as well in Sweden, and as well as Rotterdam and in the Netherlands. And Rotterdam, I didn't understand why would they target Rotterdam of all cities. And I spoke to a naval officer, and she informed me that Rotterdam is actually the mouth of Europe, where most of the food import takes place. So if you knock out that harbor, you can create famine in Europe within a week or so. Because, yeah. So I just felt, oh my God, what am I going to do? So what I did was I, together with because we had 48 hours at that time, it was October the 21st, and they said they were going to go on October the 23rd. And also October the 24th was the day of the United Nations. So if you hit the United Nations as well, that would make it a reason for the military to take part of the whole thing and be part of a military retaliation against whoever the alleged terrorist was going to be. Just like Pentagon was not hit by coincidence, it was to justify military intervention.
Right.
So anyway, so what I did was I sat from 4 p.m. till 4 a.m. and I contacted. I've done almost 1,000 interviews, so I got an incredible network of radio hosts everywhere. So I contacted as many as possible, and then we did short interviews just saying, this is what I fear is being planned. We got 48 hours. Please spread it, share it, share it, share it, share it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is exactly what happened. And after 24 hours, I started checking the number of views, and there were several 100,000 views at that point, meaning this was a possibility that we could actually make it difficult for them to go through with these plans. So October the 23rd, I'm going to come back to why I'm telling you this, because this has to do with Corona, okay?
Yeah.
Anyway, so on October the 23rd came, and absolutely nothing happened. There were no drills, there were no attacks, there was nothing, just silence. So I was like, I didn't know. Did we stop anything? Was it just speculation? And then I was contacted by a freelance journalist in Brussels, which is the capital of Belgium, and also where the headquarters of NATO is. And anyway, this guy said, you know, I've been working in Brussels for some years now. I have very good military intel. And we've been feeling something massive have been building up, but we've not been able to figure out what it is. Then we saw your warning, and suddenly everything fell into place. So he said, are you aware of what's going on right now? I said, I have absolutely no idea. He said, all the defense ministers of NATO have been called to Brussels for an emergency meeting. Also, Vice President Mike Pence and your Secretary of
Pompeo.
was turned around midair. They were in the.
Oh yeah, that was the event. That was the event where the plane turned around.
They turned around and went back to Washington D.C.
Right.
And the day after, and he said all of his words. He said, this crisis meeting and what's going on now is because of your warning. His words, not mine. I don't know. Anyway, so the very next day, you had an article in a very highly respected on a very highly respected website called voltairenet.org, where prime ministers write articles and stuff.
Yeah, I've seen that website. Yeah.
And in that, there was an article saying NATO near implosion, that everything was falling apart from NATO. And I just thought, hallelujah, because if you start looking into what NATO really are, it's a terror tool. It used to be maybe a defense mechanism. It's turned into an absolute terror tool by the same elite, so-called elite.
Right.
And at the same day as well, you had all Israeli embassies shutting down globally due to a general strike, they said. But really, do you think that the staff of Israeli embassies, of all embassies, would be able to organize a general strike and shut down all of them around the globe? I think not. There was something other going on in the background here. And so the reason I'm telling you this is because, for one thing, wonderful if we manage to have a positive effect and stop this whole thing. But 5 days before this happened, on the 18th of October, there was a big virus simulation in New York taking place, the so-called Event 201. But it's not 201. That's what they say. If you look at their logo, it's all in gray, and then you got the circle is like a planet in orange. So it's actually Event 21.
21.
According to Agenda 21. That's the whole thing, but it's hidden in plain sight. Anyway, so you had this virus simulation where this was months before anyone had ever heard of a coronavirus. And in this simulation, they had exactly that virus. They had everything was exactly like what we have now experienced, except the only thing that was different was that the epicenter was in South America. So among these 15 players that were there, were any of them from South America? Nope. Were some of them from China? Yep. Were they biochemists? Yes. So this simulation and these players were going through the exact whole thing as a simulation. That is a drill. And when it comes to false flag operations, there's always a drill beforehand because they need to practice, rehearse, get everything.
Or they could have a drill and then push the drill live.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
And this was backed and funded by the World Economic Forum. We were talking about that before,
Right.
the 1%. The other one was Johns Hopkins Hospital, which is a very, very strange institution. And also that's where the map comes from that we've seen in mainstream media all over the world. The same map from Johns Hopkins Hospital, not from some independent international organization, that hospital. And then we had the funding also of Bill and Melinda Gates. And Bill and Melinda Gates, they pop up everywhere in this drama. So this, at the very same time, there was also the documentary Pandemic with funded by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and where Bill is sort of the hero in this whole thing. Mm-hmm. Very similar, once again, to what we see was being planned out. But at the very same time as this happened, on the 18th of October, there were also the World Military Games in Wuhan, of all places, in China, where you had the United Nations had sent from 103 different nations, had sent more than 10,000 soldiers to Wuhan. So they were there at the exact same thing. And in the opening, it's a massive, big opening, incredible. And one of the things you see at the ending of this opening is like a massive, big coronavirus. I mean, it covers the whole arena of this whole thing.
What was the event again?
The World Military Games.
The World Military Games. Okay.
It is massive, massive. But when you look at the history of this, it's very, very connected to CDC, CIA, and the whole setup. It was created right after the Second World War, as were the other ones, in connection with Operation Paperclip. All of these things are connected. And now some of the funders of this 2019 year's military games were foundations that was connected to the Clinton Foundation. And I mean, you know, there's a lot of corruption there. So we have the same backing here again. So what I think happened was that I stumbled, or was divinely guided. I don't know how. I think something was guiding, because I don't think any other geek in this area, or I'm almost like a Rain Man in this area. I'm such a loser in other areas, but here my mind is made for this. And so that I managed to fall over this whole thing was just incredible. And then, so what I think happened was that they had planned all of this to happen at the very same time. That during the 36 hours from the 23rd to the 24th of October, there was also a NATO drill in Albania, an earthquake drill, that nowadays, if you look into HARP technology and different type of directed energy weaponry by Lockheed Martin and others, you will see that it's possible to create earthquakes, which they've done many, many times. Yeah. So I've been in touch with military officers in Albania, and they say that guarantee this whole thing was also supposed to take part at the very same time. It was the exact same date that this was happening. So what we looked at was 39 coordinated attacks at Manchester, London, Paris, Barcelona, Rotterdam, and then 2 power plant disasters in Sweden, one of them nuclear power plant, and an earthquake in Albania touching Croatia as well, during the exact same time. So I just want to, you know, how many 39 coordinated attacks, how many is that? It sounds a lot, but listen to this one. Boom, 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 boom. That is a lot of mayhem. If you then add earthquakes and radioactive dropout, or whatever it's called, fall down, that you can't see, but you can be told over the news, stay indoors, because it's radioactive outside. It would also give them the perfect excuse to shut down the internet, saying that these terrorists that have created all of this horror have been communicating via Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, whatever. So for your protection, we need to shut the whole thing down, and then we will offer you a commercial version, which is what they've been trying to for a long time.
Yep.
where they would censor everything and we would have to pay for it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, but what I think happened was that the idea was that all of this should happen at the same time. And at the same time, they would release the virus in Wuhan, meaning that all of these soldiers would be called back to their 103 different nations
Mm-hmm.
to help sort out this whole, but they would bring the virus with them so
Mm-hmm.
that within 24 hours, 103 countries would have been infected, or at least we would have been informed that that is how it happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think that during this crisis meeting they had in Brussels, what was decided was that there's too many people that are aware of what we had been planning. So we need to keep a low profile, go under the radar, and just
Mm-hmm.
wait until this blows over. And then 6 weeks later, we can go active. And by the way, let's go on January the 1st, which is exactly the date when this whole thing started.
Right. Right.
So I think that when you look at the corona thing that happened here, there's so many things that doesn't match up, that doesn't make sense. And that is because 50% of the plan was neutralized.
Mm-hmm.
That is why it looks so bizarre, many of these things.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So I believe that, you actually had a real hand, physical hand, probably metaphysical hand in stopping this thing and breaking it down. And I don't think it's egoic or out of the question that you played a role in that. So, and it's something you've been doing for a while now. Well, thank you for that, and I hope your savant-like abilities in that area continue to be of use to the rest of us.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
I just feel grateful to be part of it. Because could you imagine what the world would have looked like had something like that happened? They could have used it and they could have created, they've been trying for years and years to create a one world army, put the US military together with NATO and the United Nations in one
Yep.
big, there to control us, not to defend us, So that, then you had the whole thing with money in the beginning in Wuhan. They were trying to disinfect the bills, saying that, the virus gets spread like this. So the solution to all of this would be the digital currency, which they've been trying to push for many years, and where Sweden is used as a test run. Sweden is used to so many things, to test out things, because the Swedish citizen is very, up to this point, has been very lame, a very nice person who doesn't want conflicts, who doesn't want to fight or arguments. So it's the perfect place for psychopaths to test out stuff and see
I mean, they're
how they can push it.
pacifists. I mean, it's a pacifist culture,
Yeah,
essentially. Real quick, I just wanted to ask you about, I mean, I know we could probably spend another hour talking about George Floyd, but what have you gleaned just at a kind of a, I don't want to say superficial, but like at a topical level? What have you gleaned from that event?
Okay, so in all operations, you have diversion before it happens, or at a specific point, a critical point. You need to say, boom, over there. It's the same with the magician on stage. They need to divert your attention away from it. So here we have, after months and months of lockdown, where people are starting to see more and more like, this makes no sense whatsoever. What the hell am I locked in for? I'm going to go out. So they knew that they had maximum 2 months to keep us, with the head down in the mud, while they were on rolling out 5G when we were locked down. That's the whole point of the lockdown, with all of these 5G towers that are put up, especially nighttime. So, also every single year on the 25th of May, it's the Memorial Day. The dark forces love these holidays because they have a very satanic meaning to them. It's the same with Valentine's and Halloween. We think, it's really funny. No, it's not at all. When
right,
you look
exactly.
At it.
Yep.
Yeah. So also the Bilderberg meeting, which is part of the World Shadow Government, they have a secret meeting every single year, and it's always the first week of June. So every single year, there's a diversion on around the 25th. Boom, something goes down. So every single year, I'm just sitting waiting. Where's going to say boom? because it's to get the attention away, our attention and media's attention away from this top secret meeting where we're being told that now they have this meeting, but no one is allowed in. And so I was just waiting, and boom, it happened exactly on the 25th, which is I believe it's the exact same date, on the day of year as the Manchester Arena bombing, the alleged bombing there. Also the alleged beheading of Lee Rigby, an English soldier. Both of these two, absolute false flag, diversion away from the Bilderberg meeting. And this year, the Bilderberg meeting was cancelled because of Corona. I think absolutely not. They just kept it secret somewhere while we were being occupied here. So at the same time as the world is waking up saying this doesn't make any sense, and by the way, Bill Gates is the biggest psychopath the world has ever seen, not the hero we're being told, millions are waking up to that whole thing. So what happened? They needed a diversion, and boom, in came George Floyd.
Right.
So we look at that incident, and when you look at it, I mean, it looks awful. I really thought that it was real to start with before I started looking into it.
Yeah, right. I think it's so. It looked very visceral for about 48 hours, right? And then, or 72 hours, and then you begin to drill down, and then all of a sudden, there's a different reality that begins to emerge.
The timing was perfect, you know. And then things like why are no one wearing masks? Why is the police not wearing masks? I started checking out the gas prices on the other side of the street. There's a gas station there, and I spoke to a person in Minneapolis who said that this is not the price that we had during the Corona. Then you have the body cam of the second police that came there. The date of the body cam is not the same as the other cameras, you know. So
right.
Then you have, I mean, there's so many things. His name right away hit a note in my way of seeing these things, because they love having psychological manipulation involved. So when they hit and they want to go emotional, the name or the building or the victim would have some kind of emotional thing that would get us emotional. So we don't think, we just react emotionally. So here we have this big guy, 6'6", interesting numbers as well.
Right.
They love numerology.
And his number was 88 when he played football theoretically in high school. Right.
And 88. You had this big concrete garbage bin or whatever it is in the middle of all this footage. It says 666. It's 6 on 3 sides. And so you have this 6'6" guy, not 6'5", who it was because of a counterfeit bill of $20, they say, where the police normally they wouldn't go into, you know, like putting handcuffs on him or go into any kind of struggle with a guy like that. I've spoken to American police officer. They said we would just find out where did he get the bill from, because it's a counterfeit, and has he started spreading these things? Okay, then he might be suspected, but they would just go very quietly and try to find out the source of where this came from. Right. But this is not what we see here. No. And then you see also that he's being taken out of the car, handcuffed. One of the guys that come up on the driver's seat pulls a gun. I mean, for what? And then they get him out of the car, put him up against, they set him down on the pavement, and then they get him up and they take him across the street. There are 3 different police cars involved, which makes it a little confusing when people say, oh, right. It's not. Yeah, but there's 3 different police cars. And one of the second one that arrives on location is a park police car. Yep. And what that does is, at a very crucial moment in this footage, it makes a 180-degree turn and goes back, and it parks right across the pedestrian crossing. So you can, but you can still see a little of, because that's when they start wrestling. Mm-hmm. And then it's almost like somebody saying to him, no, just 1 yard further. So he moves the car 1 yard further forward, and then suddenly you can't see anything. So things like that really makes me like, whoa, that was very lucky that he parked exactly there. Then you have his name, like I said. He looked like a boxer. He was in security things, and his name was George Floyd. So I checked out. There were 3 George Floyds in Minneapolis. One was 105, one was 93, and one was 35, and this guy was 46. So where did he come from?
Exactly.
Then They say he worked at this nightclub for more than 10 years. Then he should have been in Minneapolis. No,
That's right.
no, he was from Houston, they say.
Right.
Anyway, but his name, if you want to go emotional and with African Americans, you go for boxing or sports. And
Right.
so you got George Foreman, you got Floyd Patterson.
And Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah, that as well. And then
And
you
Floyd
got,
Mayweather, by the way, helped pay for his funeral.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you have the girl.
And what month was it? It was May, right? It was May. Wasn't it May? May
Yeah,
25th, right?
Yeah.
So now we have the month of May.
Yeah.
We have Floyd Mayweather. We have Floyd.
Yeah, true.
Right?
Very
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
So then the girl that is filming this footage that is now very infamous, where it said that we see him die, the
Right.
name of the girl is Darlene Frazier. So you got Joe Frazier.
So Frazier. Her name is Darnella Frazier. Darnella Frazier. And she doesn't exist, by the way. That's another person that doesn't exist.
So this is the more
So
you look
that's
into
that's a great pickup on the boxing stuff.
And then you got like he's lying there. I've spoken to martial arts expert. They say you cannot kill someone by putting your knee there. Had it been from the front like that, you can totally destroy his thorax and kill him like that, but not on the side. It's very painful, and the police are taught that as a control grip sort of, but you cannot die from it, at least not the way. And should he'd been suffocating, he would have been, like getting totally blue in the face, and then eyes would start popping, the tongue would start coming out, and you would get shakes, and then you would die. Here, that's not what we see at all. And then you have this Derek Chauvin.
Derek Chauvin, yeah.
Yeah. But once again, with the name, it's very close to chauvinistic.
Yeah.
And it turns out that he and George Floyd apparently worked at the same club, this Nuevo Rodeo.
Right.
And you have the mayor stands up, and his lawyer, that stands up for him. He's also a close friend of the owner of Nuevo Rodeo.
Mm-hmm.
They're taking photos together. And there's also this whole thing about you can hear him. He's got a very strong voice. I can't breathe. I think he says that 16 times. Mm-hmm. And it's like a slogan. And you would see the whole thing was prepared with T-shirt prints and poster prints, and all of that was prepared for him. And then if you listen, because there are all of these psyops that are often nowadays connected also to music and stuff. Mm-hmm. So he's calling out mama twice, mama, and then somebody on the pavement says, "You're killing the guy." If you listen to Queen, mm-hmm. the group Queen,
Bohemian Rhapsody.
Bohemian Rhapsody, and this is also the time for the Bohemian Grove. And what has the Queen got on her head? A corona.
Corona, right? Corona. Yeah.
Anyway, so he shouts "Mama," and they say from the pavement, "You killed the guy." And in the background, at one point, there's a white bus coming and stopping right behind this Asian-looking police officer. Yeah. And on the side of the bus, it says, "Open your eyes." That is direct lyrics from Bohemian Rhapsody. Mm-hmm. Mama just killed the guy.
Right.
Between fantasy and reality, open your eyes, mm-hmm. In the background. Then you have the whole riots thing that started. It didn't start by people getting really angry. It was started by a guy with a black umbrella and a gas mask with purple filters, air filters. Right. Who went with a hammer very calmly and just knocked out the windows at a Target mall, a Target shop that was, as far as I know, right across the street from Nuevo Rodeo, which is also mm-hmm. the third police district.
Right.
So all of it very closely, and people were filming him saying, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" Because he just started knocking out the windows with a hammer. Right. And so they started following him, saying, "Are you an undercover cop or what's going on?" And this guy has been, I don't know, I haven't been able to see if this is true or not, but he's been identified as a police officer from St. Paul, mm-hmm. which is the twin city of Minneapolis, where mm-hmm. there's a lot of Freemasonic.
There's so much twin symbolism going on in this thing. I mean, so part of what I've been following was the death of Prince, which happened on April 21st in 2016. And whether he's dead or not, that's up for debate. But when I saw that, that was like, okay, there's something really significant going on here. I think it's the Queen's birthday, by the way, April 21st. So now we've got this whole kind of royal and this crown piece in effect. And, Prince is known for what? The color purple. He was the purple one. Yeah. And his band was called The Revolution. And where was he from? He was from the Twin Cities, right? He was from Minneapolis. And what sign is Prince? Gemini. Gemini shows up in a lot of these things, by the way. I do a lot of astrological decoding, and Gemini is very, very prominent. And Gemini shows up all over the place in this thing. Like even with George Floyd and Steven Jackson, and Steven Jackson says, oh, he's my twin. He's my twin. They used to call us twin. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, this is just getting far too obvious here. And then what's really interesting is he's passing a 20, right? He's passing a 20. And who's on the front of the $20 bill? It's Andrew Jackson. So now we have the two Jacksons. And I mean, the thing is just loaded with symbolism. And if you can peel it apart, you can see, I believe we're watching a Freemasonic operation in effect, full-on Freemasonic operation. And the thing is, right, is that when there's that shot, and I think you've seen it, all four of them are lined up either behind or on George Floyd. Like, who does this? You never see this. Why are they doing that? Are they doing it, number one, for effect? Or number two, are they trying to obscure and hide something? And is that even George Floyd there, who's basically being pressed into the pavement like a latex sort of replacement or latex stand-in? And then when they pick him up and they put him on the gurney, they toss him around like he's weightless. And if anybody has ever worked with anybody who's expired, and I know people who have, right after they go, man, you're dealing with a bag of bricks. No pun intended.
No, somebody unconscious, they weigh a ton. They weigh a ton.
Yeah.
Then you have the whole thing with the casket as well. It's not the same casket at the funeral as in the wagon they're driving down the street. But I want to go back to the guy with the hammer there because
umbrella man.
The umbrella man, because once again, the umbrella, all of these psychological, where have you seen an umbrella before if you're into this world of conspiracy? The umbrella man of JFK assassination. Mm-hmm. His real name was Roy Hargraves, and he was there as pointing the point for crossfire for all of the different shooters around Dealey Plaza so that everybody would fire at the same time. But here suddenly we have the umbrella again, and this umbrella appears over and over in many different photos with fire in the background with riot. That's how they deal with it, or how they get to our subconscious. And the hammer, I would say, is not a coincidence either. You got the color purple that is there all the time. Purple, that's a George Soros purple revolution,
right?
Or magenta. It's these two colors that keeps repeating. You will see them in the center of so many of these images. Mm-hmm. But the hammer that he was using, this guy, was black handle with red top and then a silver head. That is exactly. In Europe, I've never seen a hammer like that. Maybe it's normal in the States, I don't know. But that is exactly the hammer that is used in the Pink Floyd movie, The Wall. Where the hammer stands for fascism, and they're marching like this. It's identical. If you compare the two, they are identical.
Right.
So, and that's Pink Floyd.
Pink Floyd.
So that's all of these things.
And if you look at Dark Side of the Moon, the titles of the songs of Dark Side of the Moon actually match up with the Floyd event. Like there's a song called Money, right? Which is about the counterfeit bill. Breathe in the air. You just go right down the list of those songs. And there's some amazing syncs with Dark Side of the Moon and Pink Floyd with George Floyd. And there's a picture, I think it's a picture or video, and he's talking. He's standing in front of a brick wall. Like there's a brick wall photo with George Floyd, which goes right to your point.
Yeah, I didn't think of that one. But one of the first photos that came out of George Floyd, he's standing next to
the Corona sign. The Corona sign, right?
Yeah. And So it's just loaded. And you got like the Obama Foundation, if you go on their Twitter account, you know, he officially died on the 25th. You go in the Obama Foundation on the 17th that's 8 days before he died. They got a photo of him on a poster, a painting of him, says, "This is America."
Yeah.
How? That's
Yeah.
8 days before it actually happened.
That's a big kind of, you know, duping moment. They're just laying it out there and saying, debunk this. You know, we challenge you. It's in your face. Go ahead. Right. Nothing will happen. Ha ha ha. I mean, I think that's where that goes. Really interesting side note. And then I want to get your prediction of what you believe is going to happen next. Chaz, the temporary autonomous zone in Seattle, whose theoretical leader, Raz Simone, also known as Solomon Simone. When we think about Solomon, we think about the Temple of Solomon, right? He has a label, a recording label called Black Umbrella. And he was given an $83,000 grant from Jenny Durkin for his label, right? I mean, they just lay this stuff out. It's just, it's nuts, right?
It's very bizarre. It's very, very bizarre. And I tell you, until 2014, I was very confused around these things. And then I was contacted by an insider who said that I've been following you for some time and you're doing good, but you're missing out on the clues. I said, what clues? He said, the hidden clues. I said, I don't understand what you're talking about. He said, they leave hidden clues in the forensic evidence.
Yeah.
And I said, why on earth would they do such a stupid thing? And he said, it is because of the law of karma. They fear that law, and because also they're creating so much mayhem that they're very afraid of it. So he said, according to them, if they show us what they're going to do in subtle, even in subtle ways, and we do not react, that means that we consent, and then the bad karma is on our shoulders, not
That's
theirs.
right. That's right.
He also said that if they show us and we do not react, and they manage to pull it off, that even gains them good karma. And I said, that is absolutely the sickest thing I ever heard.
For them, it's just a weird cosmic game, right? And we have to understand that we're kind of in it. We're in their cosmic game.
Yeah.
And it may be a dark cosmic game, but we're in it. So have you gleaned anything from the Floyd event that gives you any insight into where we're headed now?
I would say police brutality, horrible. Racism, horrible. People dying of injustice, and so horrible. At the same time, please take a step back and don't go emotional. Don't jump to conclusion just because a white guy does something to a black guy. Doesn't mean that this is what is happening. It could mean that somebody's trying to fool you into moving in a certain direction. And this is what I believe strongly happened. These riots were being planned for a long time to create absolute mayhem and a massive diversion away from Corona, away from the rollout of 5G, away from the exposure of Bill Gates and the New World Order, all of these things. So the whole thing that is unfolding in the US is a massive diversion. It is a massive diversion. And to go out and loot shops and stuff doesn't lead anywhere. It's also, when you look at who is doing what. Yeah, I've got film footage of the police or people in police uniforms smashing up their own cars and turning them on fire, waiting for the media to come. There are loads of big truckloads of bricks that are being placed along the streets. Is that coincidence? The National Guard is being held back. Police is said to be, we want to get rid of police in an emergency situation like this. Does that make any any kind of logic? I don't think so. So what they're trying to do is create absolute chaos and destroy the US as far as we know. It's all the time the same. They want total destruction, and out of the ruins, they want to rebuild their world, which is
the reset, fascist, techno-fascist Agenda 21 government.
Oof, horrible.
Right.
So we are at a point here where it's really interesting because it's only here and now that you can count on, because things move so fast. And I've got intel from so many different places around the world that are normally very aware of what's going on. And now there's a big confusion. Everybody seems to be confused. Military, people in governments, confused. So I have like, either I'm being informed of a future that is so black and horrible you can't even imagine, where with mandatory vaccines that will turn us into like bionic creatures and smart city horror and that whole thing, or super, super positive future. I mean, with a global financial reset where the money will be backed on gold, where debt will be forgiven globally, and where we will be able to create a whole new beautiful world
Yeah.
together.
Well, I think there are two groups that are certainly entangled at a higher level.
Yeah.
That are trying to sort that level of reality out. Right.
It's like watching a gladiator fight, almost. The good and evil.
And a lot of us are just spectators to that in some ways, or witnesses to it in our own way. Unlike you, who are a witness, and your witnessing is making a considerable difference. So thank you for your work. Really appreciate it, man.
It's very kind of you to say so, Robert. It's been a very long and lonely road. So I'm so happy that in the end it's come to fruition that can really make a difference. But I truly believe that this is the thing, where the truth is so powerful, and that is why my website is called lightonconspiracies.com, because that is what I'm trying to do, to aim the light into the darkest of the dark, of the belly of the beast. And the truth will do its work, totally non-violent, without any anger, hatred, or revenge. It will just neutralize it. Mm-hmm. And this is the way forward, I think. Like
I'm a member of that club, but it does feel like what they want to do now is they want to bait you into the polarity game. They want to get you to react very intensely, and they want you to sacrifice your humanity and your divinity as a result of this. And when you go into that place, that's exactly what you're doing, and you become infected by the psychopathological virus. And you have to be very aware of this. It's a very important factor. I do believe in defending one's property. I do believe in defending one's family. And I think that that's an integral part of our experience in this world. We have to defend the people and not necessarily the things, but the people and the things that represent being able to support our people that we love. We have to be able to defend them. I think that's vital. It doesn't mean that we move on the offensive, or we move on an assault, or we move on an attack, right? But this is an important part of defending the sacred kind of life that we all share together. And by doing that, we stop the desecration. So whenever it comes to defense, I'm a firm believer in that, for sure. But we don't have to be violent. We don't have to go out and play that game. And when we do, we just play right into their hands.
Mm. Yeah, the thing is, I think it's wonderful because they show so clearly the way for us. They say divide and conquer. I say unite. They say hate each other. I say love each other. Yeah. They say hit your neighbor. I say hug your neighbor. They say ban healthy stuff. I say pro healthy stuff, grow healthy stuff. So they're really showing us by saying, this is the road, trying to force us. Thank you so much for showing it. I'm so not going that way. I'm going my way, this way. Yeah. And so I would say it sounds maybe new agey, but the solution is always love. Mm-hmm. Love and compassion. Whatever the problem is, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's not impossible. And it's not a game for wusses. Being loving and kind is not a sign of weakness. I mean, look at Jesus. They nailed him to a cross. And so brutal. But I think that when you see, like in laboratories, I love these. I mean, everything is frequencies in this universe. And if you take a high frequency, like love, which is the highest in this universe, and the lowest, which is fear, and let two of these frequencies meet. It's not that they start fighting and come out somewhere gray in the middle, like 50-50. The lower one just gets annulled. Boom. It's just like you go into a dark room, switch on the light. It's not that the shadows are fighting, I'm not leaving, and you have to kick them out. They just disappears. And it's the same, I would say, in this matrix that we're living in. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, when I see an individual like Jesus, if he existed, I
Right.
think he was like a super hacker who cracked the code. He
Absolutely.
understood that if you have a low frequency, the only thing you need to do is meet it with a higher. And while you're at it, why not choose love, which is the solution to everything, because it's the highest frequency. And this is what the dark ones fear as well, for us to become aware of, because they need us fearful.
Mm-hmm.
That the key to their operations is one, fear. It's
Here. Yeah.
only through fear that they can control us,
Mm-hmm.
because they want us down with a head in the mud, with a boot on top of us, where they can just rape and do whatever they want to us. That is their idea. So I would
Absolutely.
say, if fear is the only thing, the only weapon they really have against us, that's thank you so much. Then the solution is to let go of fear and to free yourself from fear, to purify your mind and let go of fear. I'm not easy. I'm not saying this is easy, but it is the way, because the
Mm-hmm.
more you fear less you become, the freer you become in all of your life as well. So you will have a much happier life as well.
Yeah.
So that is,
Absolutely.
it is the way out.
Yeah.
And so when people say, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do. Well, one of the things, do everything you can to let go of fear,
Mm-hmm.
and ask yourself every time there's something scary being pushed at you, who
Mm-hmm.
benefits from me believing it?
Yeah, absolutely. And love is, not always ooey gooey. I mean, sometimes love can be a tough thing too. Like if you have a stove that's hot, you're going to tell your kid not to put the hand on the stove because you love your kid, right? If you have a kid and you're walking across the street, you always say, look twice. You may have to really, bring that lesson home. And sometimes you may have to deny certain things to a child, because you love them. You say, I'm not going to give you this sugary soda, right? Because it's going to screw you up. By giving you that sugary soda, I'm not loving you, right? I'm doing the absolute opposite of that. So there's also love with limits, which is really really important.
Yep.
And I feel like now we have to set very defined limits with the reality that they're imposing upon us, because this is the most loving thing we can do for our children, our potential grandchildren, the animals, and the whole planet. This is the loving limit time, and it's like, no, we don't accept this. We don't consent to it.
And what you said there is key. We do not consent. That's the exact wording. We do not consent. They need our consent. You can see that in all old stories, with the wolf knocking on the door with the piglets, or whatever it's called in English, I don't know. But you know the stories
Three
with
little
the three.
pigs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. He has to knock on the door, and they have to open it. If he cannot just crash the door in, it's like the setup. It seems like in this matrix or whatever we live, that evil needs consent to be
Mm-hmm.
able to carry it out. So that is also why our so-called leaders say, tomorrow we're going to go and bomb Libya. They're waiting to see, are they going to protest? Are they going to, no, nobody said anything. Okay, fine, boom, go ahead. And then
Right.
they do it.
Yep.
They tell us beforehand. That's the same with all of
Absolutely.
these clues. They leave them out there, and for us to see. And if we don't, so I say, let's just absolutely not consent to any of their madness. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's like a group of mad scientists with unlimited budgets and psychopaths that are being, we've let them, we've been so occupied with our own lives and buried in debt.
Survival, right?
Survive,
Material
yeah.
material spells, materialism. They've really kind of gotten their tentacles into us,
Yeah.
and you could kind of make a case for it in some ways, but now the time is up. Literally, the time is up, and we have to move beyond whatever our indulgences, distractions, and struggles really have been. We have to redefine our whole experience now.
Some native Indian tribes, they say that this is the time of the times of the time, where the strongest of the strong of souls have been fighting to get a chance to come down here to experience this whole thing. It
Yeah.
is incredible when you look at it, what's going on here. And we should really be so grateful to be able to go through this mayhem, because it's going to be a fantastic chance for us to evolve.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
I want to
I
say,
feel like, go ahead.
no, I just want to say that one way also to empower yourself is gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
Fill yourself with gratitude, not just think it. You fill yourself with it. Just pump yourself up like in a balloon, and that also makes your energy goes higher and higher and higher,
Mm-hmm.
making it more and more difficult for these lower frequencies to get at you.
Mm-hmm. And acts of gratitude are important too,
Yeah,
to be able to show it. And there's a lot of different ways that
yeah, and
we can do that.
selfless acts of
Mm-hmm.
kindness, selfless act of gratitude. So it's because if you expect to get something in return, it's more like business negotiation. But if it's selfless, that's where the magic happens.
I agree, 100%. Wow, Ole, it's been great chatting with you. Great hanging out with you. Thank you for your time there, and with your exile in Spain. Uh, but,
Well.
you're a planetary nomad anyway, so you're used to this on some level. So do you want to get back to Denmark, Sweden, or are you gonna just play it as it lies, as they say?
No, we're planning on. We have two options here. It's either we stay here and things turns great, in a fantastic way, or we also have an escape route planned, because if they move in with mandatory vaccines and with military backup of that thing, it's a matter of get the hell out, So, and it's also, like I live in Spain because I had two friends murdered. I know the scenario how ugly it can get. So, and I had, there's people that don't think that I should be alive. So I have death threats sometimes. And the whole thing is that this door could be knocked in and something happened. But I have let go of fear in most areas. And I feel I'm so blessed with a magical life.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to take one step at a time and enjoy every minute if I can, and then see where does it go. I don't know, but I'm super optimistic, I must say. So, and I think it's not within a year, it's not within 6 years, it's within weeks. I think the shift is coming. I think we're super close now.
I agree. I mean, I think they're just playing everything out right now. I mean, this is it. They're using all their energy right now to make this thing happen. And if they don't make it happen after this real full frontal assault on our consciousness, I think they're in trouble. I think the only thing they have after that will be either World War III or some kind of fake alien invasion. Okay. I think those are the last two scenarios that could kind of play out. But they've expended a lot of energy to flip the script. And if they don't do it shortly, it's going to burn out. It's a very intense hot fire that burns out. And trying to restart that fire, they will have fatigue. They will have fire fatigue. They will have momentum loss. And that's when things can really pivot and shift.
I tell you, I think it's already over. I think the dragon has already been slain, and what we see is the tail just going wildly all over the place, trying to, because there's so little logic to a lot of these things that are going on. I think they're absolute, totally scared us, or terrified, because this so-called elite group, which is at the top of the pyramid, I would say that there's a problem here because the pyramid is actually pointed downwards. So It's not the top, it's the actual bottom of the bottom of the bottom of the bottom. That's where they are. Mm-hmm. And they have been trying everything they can. And this, I think, it's almost like we are in World War III right now, but it's a silent war. Yeah. It's a they're trying. This is a full frontal attack on all levels. And if they fail with this one, we're right in the middle of this super attack. If they fail this one, it's game over. There's no. And the reason why they've been able to rule for so many years is that we have been in this spell, in this coma. And now millions of people, I tell you, millions of people on a daily basis are popping up like popcorn. And it's just like a popcorn. Once it's popped, you can't push it back into the shell again. It's out there. You can't. It's a one-way street. You can't go back into not seeing. And so their only chance out here is to get a rollout of 5G, because they need 5G to be able to pull off smart cities. It's without that, their whole idea within Agenda 2030 and so on is to push us into these cities, turn us into slaves, kill a lot of us, and control us, total control. And they need 5G technology to this. Otherwise, they won't. There's nothing fast enough. And they already planned for 6G and 7G,
Sure.
but it's bad news for humanity.
Yeah.
So if they don't, and the reason they need this technology, it's AI and 5G, because there's so few. They're in the thousands. We are billions. We are billions. And so for us to even be in this situation is a bit of a joke, and we should look ourselves in the mirror and say, listen, this is not on. I need to shape up here and not allow this to happen again, because we are the ones who have allowed these psychopaths to raise up in powerful positions while we've been busy eating pizza and watching X Factor or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think at some point we just have to, understand that and then let ourselves off the hook, right, and then move on.
Yeah.
And because we can spend a lot of time, feeling guilty, and it seems like guilt's a very high currency these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just time to just get present, get here, get now, and go to Ole's website, Light and Conspiracies. He's got a ton of information, and you can get informed on a lot of this stuff. I really wanted to ask you about Anders Breivik, but we don't have time. Maybe we can have another talk sometime and
for sure
explore a few of these other things that I think are interesting.
Yeah, I've been heavily digging into that. I've been in Norway as well. I've been to the island. I've been all of this. I was almost arrested in Norway by one of the Delta teams up there. So it's I have a lot of information regarding that. It's an incredible force fight, absolutely mind-blowing.
Oh, it's a major one.
Yeah,
It's major. You know what's really interesting, before I split, there was an interesting kind of parallel between Anders Breivik and Julian Assange at that time. Like, they were both blonde, shockingly blonde, very pale. They both came onto the scene kind of around the same time. And it was just kind of a connection in my head that I made. It's like, ooh, this is interesting. And maybe you have some insight into sort of that kind of paralleling between the two.
Well, I would say Anders Behring Breivik is a phantom identity. There's the photos you see of him. I got at least 4 individuals, and it's a massive. It sounds like I'm absolutely off my head, but we can go into the show. It's an incredible story. But then you have Julian Assange, which I trust about 0%. Because when you see his background, when he came from Australia, from a sect that was very much controlled.
That weird family thing, very bizarre stuff.
And then the whole creation of WikiLeaks, where you look in the background who's funding it, who's in the different, the backing of the whole thing, you will see that it's a total psyop, back psyop.
Yeah.
It's very hard to know who to trust nowadays, because people like that, especially if they get a lot of when mainstream media is giving them a lot of space to express themselves, you have to put a major question mark and say, because the rest of us are not allowed in through the front door at all.
No. I think even Snowden, you've got to really have a lot of red flags around Snowden.
I trust him about 0% Edward Snowden.
When you really drill down into the Snowden story, there are so many holes in it. It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Hey, this has been great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Can I just finish with a prayer?
Absolutely.
I'm not religious, but I love this prayer, and it goes like this. May the entire universe be filled with peace and joy, love and light. May everyone, and especially the ones who hurt us, be filled with peace and joy, love and light. May the light of truth overcome all darkness. So victory to that light.
So be it. Thank you.
The thing is, these assholes are helping us. They're doing horrible things, but they're helping us to evolve. So on a higher plane, on a higher spiritual plane, it's almost like we should thank them for taking on so much horrible karma on them. At this level, I will do everything I can to stop them, but on a higher level. So we need to heal this whole thing, and they need to heal as well. And then we can transcend this whole thing into a beautiful world.
Yeah, let's flip the script in a very different kind of way. Yeah. All right. Well, enjoy your night there in España, and hopefully we can have you back on again and really spend some time with the Anders Breivik thing, because I think that'd be really, really interesting.
For sure.
So take good
I've
care of
done
yourself. Go ahead.
I've done one presentation that I'm very proud of. It's called When Terror Struck Norway, and it is exactly about the Anders Breivik thing. It keeps getting shut down, but we keep uploading it. So it's like, but that
Well,
one,
if you send me, if your
yeah,
secretary sends me the link to that, and also your presentation on the Holocaust, I'll make sure that those links show up in the show page.
excellent, excellent.